Welcome to the first of a series called Mint Musings. The idea is that we share in a conversation on a particular topic and then post that on YouTube. Honest conversation without an edit is exactly what it is about. It is deliberately not polished and refined. Our hope is that through our musings, it becomes a way into your own thoughts and actions. Our first topic is restructuring spiritual practices, which seemed very relevant in our current lockdown situation. On this occasion, we are joined by Danielle Easley, Kirsten Lees, Stephen Haddad, and myself, Steve Santry. We do not profess to be experts, just normal people sharing our thoughts. We hope that you find it useful.
Hello, and welcome to this discussion on restructuring spiritual practices. With me today in this discussion, we have...
Who's going first?
You go first.
It's me. Steve Santry, and I'm fascinated for us to have this discussion. I'm the minister here, and we've been working together as a little team for the last 6 months and bouncing ideas off each other. So looking forward to the conversation.
Kirsten?
I'm Kirsten. I've been attending the Mint Church for a little over a year now since moving to Exeter for work. And yeah, likewise working on these slightly alternative services.
Danielle?
Hi, I'm Danielle. A lot like Kirsten, I moved here just over a year ago, and I think discussions like these are really important in terms of spiritual practices, and especially in times like these, we can get together and communicate and open up with each other. I think is really fun and exciting. Yeah.
And I'm Stephen. I've been a member of the Mint for quite a while now. And over that time, I've been involved in a variety of ways through my house group and as a local preacher and exploring alternative forms of services of worship. And I guess I'm interested in my career as a sort of scientist and software engineer in kind of the way spiritual practices infuse the rest of our life as well.
Okay.
Right. Well, shall we get to talking? So the first thing we wanted to talk about today was, how do you include your faith in your daily routine?
Well, I mean, I'll start. In terms of including my faith, I think my faith is incorporated throughout my day. I don't personally have a designated time each day where I'll pray or do a devotional. I kind of will speak to God throughout the day. I do start my day by saying, good morning to God, and just kind of talking about the day and thinking about planning intentions and walking with Him. I think that is quite important, even if you don't have even if you don't have like a spiritual outline throughout your whole day, I think starting your day with God, me personally, is really helpful because it just puts him back at the center and reframes my day.
I found it fascinating when we were talking previously, Danielle, that you, even on things that perhaps we take for granted, like taking a meal, that you give thanks for that on each occasion, which I think personally I've got out of the habit of doing it, and I found it quite powerful what you said.
Yeah. Well, that's something that I grew up with. That, I mean, my family, we done that in every meal. And I mean, on my father's side, was Southern Methodist, so it maybe it's like kind of just like ingrained into what I know to do. But I think not just as a habit. I think now as I do it personally, I think it's really it just makes me really grateful for little things. It kind of makes me think about the journey that everything has taken to get to me, and so that we can meet. If you think about your food and the workers in fields, or like the animal that's given its life, or anything like that, you kind of just, it makes you a lot more grateful, even if it's just a little thank you. It doesn't have to be a big prayer, but it's just that little time to just acknowledge who gave it to you, and it really like a nice little spiritual refresh. It's nice. Yeah.
Good on you. I think it's about orientating our lives towards something that's different from. We can get busy with all the activities. So I mean, for me personally, my routine, if you want to call it that, in this sort of new normal that we find ourselves in, is that I consciously start each day with reading a chapter of a spiritual book, and if I do that, it seems to sort of shape the day a little bit better, because it almost makes me think about what I'm doing and reflecting on. So, and you know, I've been reading about St. Augustine. I'm now on to St. Benedict, and I was with a Desert Father prior to that, and it just somehow makes me take my mind out of the moment of what I'm going to do next into a sort of a historical perspective, but then seeing my life as a result of what I've just read.
Yeah.
Everybody's different, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, conversely, I've from time to time tried to kind of have a set time set aside, but I guess lots of things kind of interrupt my day and make it. I've often found that I might do okay for a little while, and then it kind of gets disrupted again. So I've tried to rather kind of weave it into the things that I normally react to. So like email, for example, I've tried to subscribe to various newsletters and things from, say, the LICC and places like that, which send out sort of thought-provoking newsletters and things. So in processing emails, one of those will be something from Theos or LICC, and I use that as a devotional in a sense.
Yeah, I don't think I really have what I would call a daily routine in terms of my devotional practice. I definitely do have a weekly routine, and I think that idea of different timescales is important as well, because attending church on a Sunday is something that is really important for me, whether that's physically or virtually at the moment, but having that time that is sort of a community devotional practice is really important for me. And I think also having a house group that meets regularly is very important for me, because I find that often my deepest spiritual insights tend to happen with other people. I obviously do have my own personal spiritual life, but I think that has to be in community as well, and that's a big part of my devotional practice.
Yeah, I mean, community is key for me. It's you can go on as almost like be a hermit, but actually, what's the point? It's actually about that. Our journeying is about that sort of collective nature to it, and that's why I find our conversations very stimulating, because you're coming from slightly different perspectives from me. And that's a growth point in many ways.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think when you get together with a group of people, I think for me personally, I think in terms of spiritual insight, I actually get more when I'm by myself, and it's kind of a one-on-one with me and God. But in terms of not like internal spiritual insight, but like externally, being able to get together with groups of people and listen to different people's journeys has been something that has rerouted my spiritual journey in a way. So it's been really insightful to be able to listen to everyone else and what they go through, and it kind of allows me to kind of reframe, and then I take that and I go back to God and I discuss it with him personally. And I think that's something that I think it is a really valuable resource to have other people to talk to and to ask about their spiritual journeys, because it kind of reconnects you to people, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Really. I don't want to give the impression that it's all rosy, and just because I'm a professional minister, it's not always. And I think the pressures of work and responsibilities can encroach on my sort of spiritual life, and rather than it being a reward, it can actually impinge on my sort of walk with God, and you have to keep almost rebooting to the default setting to get you back to an even keel somehow.
Yeah, it's definitely not a thing I feel that you can say, well, that's my devotional practice and that's it forever now, because the requirements of your life are forever changing and your routine and so on. So if you say, well, that's it and I'm going to do that forever now, inevitably it'll slip. You have to be constantly kind of saying, is this working for me? Am I getting anything out of it? You know, sometimes it'll vary. One day it'll be great. The next day you'll think, I didn't get anything out of that today.
Yeah, I think that's why it's so important to remember that it's recentering and refocusing, meaning that we've at some point lost our focus or lost our center. And I think it's absolutely fine as Christians to be like, okay, well, I've kind of not been doing everything that I used to be doing, so let me get back to the reason why I'm doing this. And also, I don't think that God is a God of being stagnant. I think he moves with us and he flows, and Jesus is literally the prime example of moving and flowing through life. And he came and he changed up everything because it wasn't working, because it was the same, and people were not changing with the times and doing the same exact thing in a world that was changing and needed something different. And I think that if we keep our practices the same, it doesn't really match who we're worshipping. So I think if our lives change, we have to change our devotions and how we go about praising God, knowing that he's the same, but just how we've had to now focus and recenter ourselves to do something different.
Do you not think that, I mean, we can, if we do anything for the same length of time, we can become stagnant. But one of the positives of this coronavirus and the lockdown that we've had, it's forced us into a new way of thinking. We've got this new ordinary, as we keep calling it, or the new normal. And actually that's helped me in my sort of explorations of faith, really, rather than being a hindrance.
There's a certain kind of almost forced mindfulness in that things that you kind of just did on autopilot before, you have to restructure because of your new routine and way of doing things. And going through a process of doing that, you're thinking deliberately about things that you didn't necessarily think deliberately about before. And yeah, I certainly highlight for me the need that's useful to do from time to time.
I know it's maybe not one of the questions that we were perhaps thinking about, but does the isolation impact on your faith at all? That you're not being able to see people and physically touch and all the usual things that we do?
I think for me, it's a little like when I went traveling after I left university. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's very different because obviously then I was in new places, meeting new people every day, whereas now I'm just stuck at home. But what is the same is that sense of the closest relationship that I have currently being with God, because God is the only person who is present here with me. and God was the only person who was making that journey with me when I was traveling. So in that sense, I think it's brought me back to a time when my faith was very strong, which has been quite nice. I mean, obviously the circumstances are not good, but the side effect of that strengthening personal relationship has been quite good.
Yeah, I would say for me, it strengthened my faith because I can get knocked around by outside influences sometimes, and to be able to just be with myself and God and just kind of think about what I would want and thinking about the life that I would like to lead and how I want to serve God and listening to my own intuition, has been really helpful to be able to like kind of recharge and do the whole, self-care everyone's been talking about. But I think it is really about like doing like a MOT on my own, like on myself, and being able to check in and see how I'm doing. And it's been extremely helpful, and it's allowed me to refocus and recenter on like goals and desires and what I personally think Christianity and faith is, rather than just listening to the outside, because I don't think you get a lot of time. I don't get a lot of time to stop and think about what Christianity and faith means to me and what my faith is, and remembering and reminding myself that it's a personal journey. So that has been extremely valuable for me.
That's interesting, because in some ways I've connected more with some people in my circle of friends and so on, in that again, kind of because of the deliberate thing, because I know they're kind of isolated, so I've tried to make a point to do stuff with them online. But yeah, kind of in terms of church, I was realizing this Sunday that there were people that I would regularly chat to at church and kind of find out about what's going on with them. And it's kind of a two-way support thing, not that I was doing anything great, but just that kind of connection is quite helpful, I find, hopefully for them as well, that you can't do as easily. It was the kind of, I wouldn't necessarily call them that often, although I have called some people. It was just a kind of casual conversation in passing for a few minutes, but that's still quite valuable, that I feel like you're missing out on in this sort of setup.
Be interested to see what happens when we all gather together and live in community again.
Do you remember how to do that? Yeah. Are there any other ways, and if you feel that your sort of routine, devotional life, faith has kind of been altered by lockdown generally?
I suppose one thing that I have valued is what I've called the Boris walk each day, and almost, we haven't got a dog, so there's no need to go out for a walk each day, but it's forced me into it because that's my exercise and fresh air and what have you, and I've really valued it. Generally, it's either with my son or my wife and my son. We've found new routes to go, and to be out in nature and fresh air, and to value some of those things again it's life enhancing and spiritually enhancing as well.
Funny how scarcity suddenly makes you notice the value of things.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, even just wandering around not far from my house, but because I'm doing it regularly, kind of really noticing aspects of the area that I didn't know before, which is quite nice.
Something else I found myself doing is singing hymns just by myself, because it's something I miss. I miss being able to sing in church, but doesn't mean I can't just sing them anyway while I'm doing the washing up.
Yeah.
Oh, sister. It reminds me, my gran used to sing hymns all the time when she was in her kitchen, and she was brought up with the hymns, and that was her faith, and she got her sort of theology from those things, and it had an impact on me as well, because I used to go and sit in her kitchen with her.
Yeah, I certainly do that. Certainly, I often find myself singing whatever we might have done on a Sunday in the kitchen that evening.
Pity our people that we live with, if anybody.
Yes. Try not to sing too loudly to disturb the neighbours. So what would you find, I think we talked a bit about this, but anything that we haven't covered that you find particularly challenging to your sort of faith and devotional routine in your day-to-day life, something that you find challenging that kind of interrupts what you would like to be doing?
I think one thing that I'd just like to add, and I've been speaking to one or two people about this, that one or two people have felt tired, and it's strange because actually we're not doing quite as much. But I don't know what you guys think about the whole. Depression and tiredness sometimes go together, and there might be a sort of a mild sort of worry and concern as a result of what's going on that is showing itself in that sort of the lethargy that can be experienced. And I don't know whether, I've got an element of that, but my routine, I kind of drive through it, if you know. But I'm mindful of it at least.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether you've experienced that at all.
Yeah, I think also the flip side of that, because there's that kind of depressive lethargy that you mentioned, but the flip side of that is being so anxious and stressed all the time that your stress hormones are so high that it's just exhausting to have that level of worry going on all the time. So I think it's perfectly valid to be tired.
Yeah, I certainly think, perhaps in the first week or two, there was because there was just so much information going around about kind of spending perhaps too much time paying attention to the news, and there was just the kind of background level of anxiousness that one has was just dialed up. So I've tried to kind of turn that down a little. But yeah, it's exhausting, and I guess I'm lucky in that I have sort of continuity. I can work from home and so on. So there are lots of other people who have additional layers of anxiety on top of that, homeschooling kids or worried about finances or so on. And I think that just adds another layer of tiredness.
Yeah, I think it can be fatiguing, like with all that information coming at you, especially when in the early days when it was just numbers and numbers and numbers and numbers, and
I found that
it was really overwhelming because you think about numbers, but then you think about the scope, and it can be really it can be too much. And I think that can definitely wear you down. So I think that kind of tiredness can sometimes be a result of just trying to adjust to these circumstances because they are unprecedented, and that's the thing that everyone says. But like, it is like, this is not something that we thought we were going to experience, and no one prepared to experience. And so I think kind of in this instance, any way we're kind of coping with it as long as it's healthy is entirely valid, because no one knows how to cope with it. There's no authority on it, and everyone is just kind of, there's more information and there's people with more insight, especially medical professionals, etc. But the rest of us citizens, we're just as blind as each other. So I think it's just about building community and checking up on people. But I think I think any reaction is kind of understandable. It's just kind of maybe giving yourself the love and acceptance and the leniency to work through those emotions at whatever pace is fit for you.
Thank you.
I think that's also something I think in kind of thinking about that, it's like devotional routine, that it doesn't become a list of things you feel pressure to do in your day.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's so.
Where it's not, it's not helpful then.
Yeah.
No, I've noticed online a lot, like on my Facebook and Instagram. It's kind of there's a divide between people. There's some people who are very much like, grind hard, let's go, like you have all this free time and there's no excuse. Like if you're not, if you haven't learned the piano, learned a language, learned how to bake, all this stuff, like what are you doing? Like you didn't, like there was some quote exactly, it was like, if you didn't learn how to do this and this, you didn't lack the time, you lacked the discipline. And I'm like, millions are dead, like relax a second. Like I think that it's kind of like as much as I understand this the sentiment, it's a gross misunderstanding of the times that we're in. This is not by choice. And I think that I think to add that pressure on, you don't need to learn how to bake, and it's absolutely a time in this tragedy to find opportunities to do something new or to rediscover things that you love. But there's not a pressure to become this whole new person that you don't know exists. It's a new time to discover yourself, discover your community. There's good things that can be done in it, but I think that it's definitely a bombardment and like this performance anxiety that some people may be feeling, at the end of this pandemic, to come out and just be like, ripped abs, I know 3 new languages, I have my business off the ground, and like I'm perfect, and like that's unrealistic. I think like setting daily goals or having a plan once you get out, these are all fine, but like if they pile on, it's gonna be like not even wasted, it's just gonna be unneeded stress on yourself, and you don't need that along with what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. I think the value from those things comes more from, a case of like, say, baking. If baking is how you're connecting more with your kids or your spouse or something, then that's great. Or if it's taking your mind off the anxiety, then that's great.
I wish there weren't quite as many people baking, because you can't get any flour at the moment.
Oh, yes.
Oh yeah, no eggs, no sugar, no flour, no butter.
But there we go. Every cloud.
Yeah, I found myself thinking I started to get myself into more of a daily routine for the work week, but then I've consciously completely set that routine aside at the weekend. And that's kind of part of my routine to make it feel like a weekend. So it's kind of that idea of having a routine when it's beneficial, but then not rigidly sticking to it.
Yeah. I think for me, it's like knowing itself and accepting who I am as well. That's why it's like going back to like, it's really been an eye-opening experience about who I am and what my personality is. Because I like baked goods. I like to eat baked items, and I like to cook kind of, but I have to just be honest with myself and be like, are you gonna bake bread? And I'm not gonna bake bread. And so like to pressure myself to be like, I should know how to make all this stuff, and I should learn how to like plait a loaf. Like I'm not gonna do that, because that's not something I find enjoyment in. Like if I want to make bread, I'll eat it, but like it's not a passion. Like needlepoint, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to learn how to like, sew a garment. I'm not going to do any of those things. But if that's something you enjoy and you've not had time to do those things, now is a great time. But I mean, just be honest with yourself and be like, am I gonna do all of this stuff? Am I gonna buy weights and work out every day? Like maybe you won't, but like if that's something you want to do, then try out. It's a great time to try and fail and succeed and all that kind of stuff. Just take it easy.
Can I just leading on from that, ask about have you found it beneficial, or have you tried stillness anymore in this time, and stop the mad crazy speed of everything? Because actually one of the things early on when we were going into this lockdown, somebody said to me was, use it as a gift. This isn't just about sort of all the different things that you can do in this spare time. Actually find the space in order that you can reboot yourself, you can re-energize, and actually find a different way of doing things if you've been too busy. I don't know if that's been a way for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, for me, definitely finding a new way of doing things. It's definitely allowed me to think about the ways in which my life has not been working for me, or like there's certain patterns or habits that just haven't been beneficial. But that's the way I approach work, or the way I approach life, or just not being able to slow down. Especially the concept of busyness has changed, because I'm not necessarily going anywhere or every day. So just being able to be like, okay, why am I rushing? Like, where am I rushing to? I am literally in my house. Why am I rushing? And that I have to like slow down and being able to analyze my patterns, and just kind of just think about my life in general. Like I'm kind of going off topic, but it's very, I think it's really important for me to be able to be like, just evaluating all the ways I can find stillness, and realizing that I need to enter into patterns that benefit me rather than just doing it for the sake of doing it or thinking that's what I need to do has been really helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah. And sometimes just such simple things like, I guess my usual is like, well, I'm going to have a cup of tea, but while I can do this cup of tea, I'm also going to do the following things. So I'm packing things in nice and efficiently. I guess because it has been, certainly for me, a bit more time, kind of to say, I'm just going to sit on this chair now and drink my cup of tea and not do anything else. And that is quite nice to allow yourself that luxury.
Yeah, I was talking with a friend the other day about this concept that we've always divided our hobbies into hobbies which are productive and unproductive. So the productive hobbies would be things like exercising, baking, things which have a result. Whereas the unproductive things, watching a film. And I've always been someone who's very much focused on spending my time on productive things. And I've always kind of felt that taking time out to do the unproductive activities is almost wasted time. And this sort of enforced slowing down of everything has actually made me reconsider and to start to value those unproductive hobbies a bit more. Like, I've just completed a 2,000-piece jigsaw today, which I never would have spent time doing if we hadn't been in this situation. Because it's pointless in the scheme of things. No one's ever going to look for jigsaw putting together on my CV. But it's something that's been really calming and really beneficial to me.
I dare you put it on now.
But here's the thing: if it is calming and it is something that is beneficial, then it is productive.
Well, yeah, it's the definition of productivity that's happened to change, I think. I
think sometimes we can judge it, and that's what I mean by like systems that don't really work, because we have this kind of definitive, like, this is something that is useful, this is something that isn't. But everything that we found not useful, like, are all things that are benefiting us holistically, like our mind, our well-being. Doing a puzzle for you is relaxing. Watching movies for me is invaluable. I don't know what I would do without it. And so those are all entirely valuable. I see it as just as valuable as exercising to me, because it is something that calms me. Listening to music, dancing, like, these are things that really do help me. And I think that if doing a puzzle for you, that's productive because you enjoy it, and the product at the end, sometimes I think because we kind of focus on product orientation rather than process orientation, and the process of it is relaxing and calming to you, and that's perfectly justifiable and that's perfectly valid. I like to dance, and I'm not aiming to get on a stage anytime soon. I'm not aiming to like make choreography. It's the process of dancing that I enjoy, and that makes it valid because it's something that I turn inwards and I go, instead of for me when I dance, instead of things coming at me like I'm watching and I'm consuming, it's an output, and sometimes it's just the changing of input to output it's invaluable. So I think again it's like, that refocus of priorities is really valuable. I said valuable a lot.
And also, I guess we often see kind of everything, kind of like trying to measure like the output of like this half hour of time, whereas actually everything's kind of quite connected, and kind of taking a more holistic view of your day, that I did these things and they're all a good part of my day. I can't necessarily measure something that came out of it, but it was good in itself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think sometimes you kind of think, what have I accomplished? And I think, again, it's the product orientation. Like, well, how much stuff did I get done? But you feel terrible. You don't feel any better about your day. You haven't really accomplished anything. It's like you've done stuff, but you're kind of going around in circles. But I think sometimes just having a really nice day is a really I think that's worth it. If you I've had a great day. I watched birds. I maybe made bread, or I just watched TV. It was a great day. I got some laundry done as well, and it was lovely. And I think that is entirely valuable and worth it. And I think that more people, hopefully, because of this time, will be able to understand that, and then their approach to life will change.
We have to learn that, though, Danielle, because if we've been in that task-orientated life for so long, you always default to it. So actually, it's like stillness. You have to grow into it over a period of time so that it becomes the norm. As you say, with this lockdown, it's given us that opportunity to try it. Yeah,
absolutely. I think even if you don't come out at the end of this being like, oh, I've I've done it. I've cracked the code. Like, I'm completely peaceful. At least it planted the seed, because I don't know a person who, well, I mean, yeah, there may be some people, but for me, I don't know many people who would be like, oh, I've experienced peace. Now to go back to my hellish life of not feeling fulfilled, and I can't wait. I think that if you've had a taste of peace and a really good work-life balance, there are people right now who are spending more time with their kids and, you know, working from home. Yeah. And I don't think they're going to want to go back to not seeing them and having stress and commuting. No one is. And I think it's at least going to open people up to the idea that, oh, there's a life I can really enjoy and it's worth fighting for, because I'm able to, you know, have it all in terms of I'm enjoying my life and I'm being productive. And I think that at least it will plant the seed of there's something out there that isn't this, and I want to kind of explore that more.
I think part of the practice is also kind of coming back to what Danielle was saying about meals, kind of being so you sat in the garden and potted around for a while and kind of being thankful for it, not necessarily like saying an explicit prayer, but being aware of this time and that you enjoyed it and being thankful for it, so that you kind of acknowledge that.
Yeah.
Helps you kind of get into the routine of saying, oh, I'm going to do that. It was worthwhile.
Yeah, it is worthwhile. Yeah, you are worthwhile, and it's all worthwhile. I think it's kind of like turning back to a value on self and self-esteem, and realizing, yes, wait, this is not everything we think is pointless is all things that benefit ourselves and make us happy, usually, that we can't see a product from, like just taking a nap. Like, no one can see the results of that, but you feel it. And I think those untangible things, I think, may become a lot more valuable later on.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've done a good full circle there, Mr. Haddad, in bringing it back to where we started, with regards to giving thanks for the meals that we have. Is there anything else that we want to do, or should we wrap this up for the moment? Any other questions we want to explore?
Well, I think so. We've talked about our, sort of the connectedness of our devotional routines and the value we get out of that, and I think that's certainly something that's important for me. I mean, one thing I noticed in terms of kind of my faith journey is the absence of preparing services as a local preacher. That's become quite an important part of kind of how my devotional is kind of the research and so on behind services, which is one of the reasons I've kind of started doing virtual services, because actually, even if no one listens to what I say, it's a valuable exercise for me. It's valuable just as a practice in itself, and but also the connectedness though of it when then I chat to people after services is part of that. It's, that kind of connectedness that's, in its absence you really notice and value. Mm. So certainly for me, this sort of unusual time of routine, kind of highlights what's really been valuable.
Great. So I think should we wrap it up at that point? And thank you everybody for your contributions, and we'll perhaps do this again at another point.
Yeah,
I like this. It was nice.
Good.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye then.